Hello and welcome. My name is Lori Lynch. I'm the Director of Training for iStation, and we are going to be talking today about reports, specifically helping teachers understand what reports should really be used for accountability, for documentation, helping to show students data, and helping them understand their use of iStation, and then looking at things from grade level perspectives as well and how to share that information outwardly. So we're going to walk through reports that are available as of today. So we're going to go to the iStation website. I'm going to reduce my picture there. I'm going to look at the new website for iStation. What we see here now, in order to get logged into the iStation website, you're going to go up here to the very top. And typically where you would see login here to view student reports, you're now going to see customer login. So it's pretty basic, straightforward, right up here in the upper right. The process for logging in is exactly the same as you have experienced it in the past. The only difference is now it says customer login. So we're going to click here for customer login. Now typically if you're logging in for the very first time, you would see a screen that says select your school. If you've been using iStation in the past and you've already gone through this step, then you'll go directly to the login and password page. But for those who may be new to iStation, this will be your very first step in selecting your campus. So for instance, if you worked for Smith Elementary, then you would type in Smith, and then you could look to see where there is a Smith Elementary. Once you identify the correct campus that belongs to where you work, then you'll be asked to put in a username and a password. The only way that it's going to recognize you as a user is if you've identified the appropriate campus. So if this is incorrect, then your username and your password will not work. If you find that you've chosen an incorrect location, you can go to select a different school and then try again. So let's say maybe it's Jones Elementary. And then again, your username and your password will be then available for you to log in. If you've forgotten your password, for some reason you get to this phase and you're not exactly sure what your password is, it's maybe been a while since you've used it, you can click Forgot Password. Once you do this, it does allow you to type your email address into this box and submit a reset password request. Once this email reaches you, it will have your login identification information in the email, but there'll be a link in the email to reset the password. iStation does not keep passwords. We don't know passwords for you here at iStation.com, so you would need to reset that password on your own, and simply by emailing yourself, you'll be able to do so. I'm going to go ahead and log myself in here. Now, once you log on to iStation, there's going to be a couple of new features this year. Right now, everything's going to look very similar as it has in the past. But what I'm going to take you to is the new look of the iStation website. And that's going to be done by clicking here where it says Preview the New Look. By the end of August, you will no longer need to click Preview the New Look. It will automatically take you to all the new features of the iStation website. One of the brand new features this year in iStation.com is what we call the Report Builder. And the Report Builder is actually an upgrade for you in identifying your reports because it's going to allow you to be very specific about what you're looking for. So for instance, when I go here to the Quick Report Builder, and if you're someone that wants to read through everything, this will definitely take you in step by step on what you're doing in each step of the Report Builder. But let me just click through a few things for you. So if I'm a classroom teacher and I get into the Report Builder, let's say that I'm a second grade teacher. My students are going to be taking the ISIP Early Reading Assessment. Pre-K through third grade would be identified as ISIP Early Reading. Any student in fourth grade and above would be considered ISIP Advanced Reading. ISIP Early Reading, Pre-K through 3, ISIP Advanced Reading, 4th grade and up. I'm actually going to be looking at my summary report. That's the one I want to start with. When I talk to teachers about what reports should you use, there's really 3 basic steps that I teach them, and it's really a very logical approach to the way reports should be utilized, especially in your first couple of years of using iStation. The very first report that we should look at is what's called the ISIP summary. So once you've identified the product as ISIP Early Reading or ISIP Advanced Reading, you would then choose Summary. When you think about students who are taking the ISIP assessment, the first question that comes to mind once students have logged on to the program is, how did we do? That's the first step. How did we do? So how did we do? We need to find out how students have placed, what's tier level, what the tier level is for each student. Are they tier 1, which is equivalent to students that are on track and moving forward? Are we talking about tier 2 students, those who are struggling readers that are moderately below our grade level? Or are we talking about tier 3 students? These are our students who are severely below grade level and are in need of intensive intervention. So we need to find out where the group has landed. That's our number 1 priority. So the ISIP summary is the first step when we're looking through reports. ISIP summary. Now let's go through these other tabs to make sure that we have fine-tuned what we're looking for. Now I'd like to make sure that I'm reporting on the appropriate school year so I can make sure my reporting year is correct. I'd actually like to go back and look at something in the spring. So I want to pull up my April. You can choose whatever month it is that you're interested in looking at. That's not of consequence. It really is dependent upon what you're interested in seeing. Now remember, I'm a 2nd grade teacher, so I'm going to be looking at 2nd grade. Now because I work for iStation, I have a lot of choices that I have to make in my choices for the reports. For a classroom teacher, these are going to be much less. You're going to only be looking at your particular classroom. So remember, if you're a classroom teacher, you can only see what your classroom has done as far as the reporting features are concerned. If you're someone that's at a leadership level at your campus, you can see everything by grade level or by campus. If you're someone at a district or state level, you can see everything from the top down, all the way down to the individual child. A classroom teacher will only be able to view things from their classroom perspective, just the students that report to them. So some of these identifiers may not necessarily be applicable to you as the classroom teacher, but just so you can see how this functionality works. My targeted users. Now again, I work for iStation, so I'm going to have to go through a lot of choices here to get to what I'm looking for. You will not have this issue. You'll be going directly to the group that you're identifying for. So I'm going to be looking at a demo classroom right now in the early reading genre, and I'm at John Adams Elementary, and I'm going to be looking at a 2nd grade classroom. Now I'm ready to run my report. So the ISIP summary is the first thing I want to see because I need to see where we landed. How do we do? How many kids do I have at tier 1? How many do I have at tier 2? How many are at tier 3? All of this is going to be color-coded for you within the report. So you can see the green, the yellow, and the red, the overall picture of your classroom, and then a breakdown of the individual subtests that were administered. And you can see what those little symbols will mean here. Nice little decoding piece right here. So decoding, comprehension, vocabulary, spelling, and text fluency. These were the choices and the things that were given to your students. So these are the subtests administered by the ISIP assessment. Down below, you can begin to see individual students. This is actually a really helpful feature because as you're looking at the individual child, you're going to see their overall ability score. This overall ability index score is going to correlate to a tier level. These are all according to national norms. iStation has normed its tests with national norms across the U.S., and we have developed our own proprietary scale that equates to tier levels. Just like any other product, such as DRA, Lexile, anything that gives you a level of reading or a level of ability, they're going to have their own proprietary scale. iStation is no different. We have our own scale That scale is actually available in the report builder by visiting the toolbox. And you'll see that toolbox here at the top. And you'll find your instructional tier goals here. These instructional tier goals will show you what is the goal number for each month of the year for every grade level that's using iStation. So you'll be able to see that, and that way you have a heads up. Know what to expect. What's the number we're shooting for when it comes to Tier 1, Tier 2, and Tier 3? So you'll be able to use that toolbox to identify those instructional tier goals. As we're using these reports, one of the key features is the blue plus sign that you'll notice. You'll see that in quite a bit of our reports. A blue plus sign actually means that there's more information to be seen. So by clicking on it, you're actually going to be able to open up a lot more information about that individual child. So let's say, for instance, that we were very interested in Nicole, and we needed to do a little more investigative work. Maybe Nicole is showing up Tier 3, but we're not quite certain that Tier 3 really is the correct identification. Maybe Nicole is a much stronger student, and we're concerned about that Tier 3. By choosing the blue plus sign, it allows you to get down to the list of all of the assessments that have been administered for the entire school year. If I'm very concerned that Nicole's letter knowledge tends to still be on the low side, even in the second grade, I can definitely find that and open up the corresponding blue plus sign for Nicole with that particular subtest in mind. I can then actually look to see what was the question. What did the narrator actually say to the student, and what choices did they have? What was their response? And then how many seconds did it take them to respond? This is actually very helpful if you find that a student may or may not have been applying themselves in this particular subtest. So if you see some random mistakes, areas that they're missing, you can actually follow in right here and find out. If they're answering within less than a second or around 1 second and they're not correct, for this one, click on the letter that makes the sound E, and the student chose the letter A, then we would definitely be concerned about that particular student. So great way to investigate and dig a little further. You can simply just hit the back button to get back to that location. You could choose any subtest that you're interested in. So we could go to decoding or comprehension or even spelling to find out what was the narrator asking, what was the response of the child, and then how many seconds did it take them to respond. So when we're looking at that classroom level, and I'm an individual teacher, I want to start with that ISIP summary. So I'm actually just going to hit the back button and get ourselves back to that ISIP summary. Remember, I identified the product as ISIP early reading because I'm a second grade teacher. I fall into that pre-K to 3 arena. Then I chose the summary report. So I made sure that I'm identifying the correct time of the year and the correct month that I want to see. That's my first stop at that classroom level. If I'm a principal, or maybe I'm a team leader, or I'm in a specialist role where I'm someone that's supervising multiple classrooms, or I need to view all the data across the campus, someone of that role is called a manager. We call iStation managers those who have a view above the teacher level. So it's someone at that particular level would actually be able to look at this kind of report from a grade level perspective. So we could actually look at all of second grade across this particular campus to see what percentage of our students in second grade are in Tier 1, 2, and 3. So again, it's just as simple as making sure you're going through that report builder and identifying what it is that you're actually looking to see. The next report that we want to identify for teachers when we're talking about accountability, intervention, documentation, all of these features that we want to continue to cover. I'm actually going to edit this information, so I'm going to edit my report, and I'm going to change what I'm looking at. So I'm going to go to Products and Reports, and I'm going to change from the Summary Report to Step 2, Priority. When I talk about Step 2, there's really 3 reports, and I'll say it again, 3 reports we recommend you really wrap your brain around in the beginning of your implementation. Number 1 is the summary. Number 2 is the priority report, because now that we've seen where we landed, Step 2 is what's next. What do I do with this information going forward? And that's why the priority report is so key. It's very aptly named. We call it the priority report because we're identifying priority needs for intervention. So we're looking at these students who are showing up with a priority need in iStation. So we're going to choose priority. I'm going to make sure all my options are here. I'm going to target my users. That's all stayed the same, so I'm still at John Adams and I'm still in that second grade class. I'm going to run this report. Once we get to a priority report, what you're going to notice at the very top is it's actually going to tell you about all of the interventions that are showing up on this report. And then we can scroll into it and we can actually see it with our own eyes. We can see in ISIP Early Reading, under the area of comprehension, Malaysia, Marcus, and Edwin, all three of these students struggled while taking this ISIP assessment. So what are we going to do next? Well, we've seen it now. We've seen with our own eyes these three students are struggling in the comprehension area. So how do I jump in and perform small group instruction? Well, we offer you an option here on this particular report where we can choose a lesson, and you'll notice this little PDF that's right here that allows you to click and open up an entire lesson that's designed to provide intervention with the student. Now, this is the teacher piece, so this is something that the teacher is going to be taking and running with. We're going to go to this lesson, and we're going to dig into this particular lesson. We're going to find on page 2 of this lesson, it actually tells us, based on the tier of the student, we recommend the following lessons within this packet. Let me back up for a second. When we're using an ISIP-related intervention lesson, I want you to think of those like a packet. Anything that's tied to ISIP, to the assessment, is going to be a packet of information that's going to help you see exactly what particular lesson within the packet is appropriate based on the tier of the student, so that you're not looking at this in a very overwhelming way and thinking, oh my gosh, I've got to do 4 lessons with this one student. Not necessarily the case. Now, all 4 lessons could be helpful, but we give you a starting point. Because ISIP is the assessment, and because it's literally looking at broad areas of well-researched reading, so we know we're assessing the right domains. We're assessing these domains because reading research says these are the domains that are appropriate to test on to determine whether a student has strong reading ability and is headed in the right direction when it comes to reading. So these are broad. These are broad topics like comprehension, vocabulary, phonemic awareness. These are broad topics. So these lessons are going to be broad in scope. They're not going to be specific to certain words or certain phrases or certain passages. They're going to be broad in scope to help a student with the strategy in improving in that particular area. So for instance, Tier 3 students here in comprehension would use categorization strategies to develop vocabulary through word associations, because a lot of comprehension falls back on a lack of vocabulary. So these are the things that we would begin to work on with that Tier 3 student to build the comprehension area. So just to kind of help you understand, these are packets of lessons to be used over time in preparation for the next go-round of assessments. Each of our lessons is scripted, so as you scroll into them, you'll notice that there is everything in bold where the teacher should be speaking. So if you have a teacher who is not necessarily a reading specialist or doesn't have a strong reading background, they could still take this lesson and really sound like a reading specialist. We often have people that are coming in doing intervention that are not well-versed in the reading background. So we have to provide tools that will allow folks to sound brilliant in their delivery of reading intervention. Even parents can use these lessons if teachers decide to send these home for additional practice. So that's step 2. That's our priority report, where it identifies the students who are in need of priority intervention. Teachers can actually document intervention on this report. So if I performed intervention with Malaysia, Marcus, and Edwin, you'll notice I just clicked next to their names, and I could type a note here. So I said here I used lesson 3 and saw improvement. I could say I used lesson 3, still improving. And on this student, I could say I use something completely different. Maybe I use something out of Pathways, page 49. So whatever the case may be, you can type whatever kind of note you want to in this particular area. Once you have gone through these steps by clicking next to the child and making a note, this is your Save button. This allows you to save this documentation. You would click the Intervention Lesson Delivered button, and that will record that an intervention occurred in this topic on this day with this teacher. This is very valuable information for those of you that are implementing for RTI, response to intervention, for those of you who have students with IEPs, and you need to bring documentation to show intervention to meet IEP goals, for conferences with parents to talk about what we're doing to improve skills within a student's reading ability. Many different reasons why documentation in intervention is very key. iStation's priority report allows you to do so. Now, I'm not going to actually click on this report because I don't want to record interventions that I personally didn't deliver, but that is something that your teachers will want to do, and that allows them to keep a running history of intervention. So, for instance, if Malaysia was a student that I needed to provide a running history of intervention on, I could actually click on Malaysia's name, and for the previous school year, I could see interventions that were delivered, who they were delivered by, and then the actual date of delivery. This is great because as students use it in previous years, you'll be able to recall the history of intervention for every school year that that student used iStation. This is very valuable, again, for RTI, for a referral situation, any type of situation that requires intervention documentation. The last report that I'm going to focus on, and we're going to go here and edit this information as well. I'm going to change the type of report I'm looking at. I want to go to the student summary handout. This is a report that I recommend to teachers not only for themselves but to share with parents, and it's fabulous to share with the individual student. How do I hold a student accountable? If I see them not performing to the ability that I think they're capable of, this report really does show visually if the student is growing in every area that they're assessing in. So this report does a multiple function opportunity for all those involved. Again, I'm going to make sure my options are set. We're looking at the English version of our reports for this previous school year. My targeted users would be my classroom at John Adams Elementary, and I'm looking at this second grade classroom. From a teacher's perspective, I can actually select all of my students and print a one-page report on every child so that I can share that very comfortably with a parent or with an individual student without worrying about other kiddos being on that report. So I would definitely want to single out the kids that I'm looking at if I'm just doing a small group piece, or if I'm preparing for parent conferences, I could select all and print these for each one of my students. I'll go ahead and do select all and then run the report. Now keep in mind, the more information that you're recalling up, so I'm doing my whole class, it's going to take a little bit longer than, say, just one or two students, even though that was pretty quick. So we're seeing Emily. Emily's our very first student. She's in my classroom in second grade. This is actually telling me that she's a Tier 1 student right now, and she has a grade equivalency of end of third grade. So she's already maxing out at end of third grade expectations, even though she's a second grader. Her overall reading ability shows in tremendous growth and tremendous trajectory, a positive trend. What's what we want to see. We can look at all the areas that we've assessed Emily in this year, and we can see the trend of growth over time. Again, a very cool visual for those students who need to see where they're heading. Great for parents and parent conferencing, and the ability to share this comfortably without having to worry about a classroom report where all other students' names are on that particular sheet. So you can click on the print button, and these will print off one at a time. Next is Catlin. Catlin is also Tier 1, and again, we can see the visual pieces. Next, we go to Aaliyah. Aaliyah is Tier 1 as well. Brian is a Tier 2 student overall, and we can see that his growth was positive, but we had some little defaults here going backwards in comprehension. That did cost him a little bit over time. Colby is Tier 1. And again, as I scroll through these, you can see that each student is getting their own individualized report. There's Daquan. Daquan is a Tier 2 student. And we can see that Daquan actually kind of stayed a little bit flat this year. Not a lot of positive trends for Daquan. So this would be a student that we would definitely want to keep an eye on. He is a Tier 2 student, but he's just barely a Tier 2. We didn't see a lot of gains. He didn't really seem to improve as much as we would have hoped from beginning to end of year. Darian's Tier 1. So I know I'm going through this kind of quickly, but you can get the idea that as I print these will print off one student at a time. So again, they're comfortable for sharing with parents, great for sharing with your students, and that way you can talk about a student-specific data. If you can just take a second to follow me here, all of these screens here, all of these graphs are what we call live. They're clickable. So if I wanted to take a look at why the comprehension didn't grow tremendously, I could actually click right on this live graph. And I'll be able to get to this individual student's skill growth report in that particular area, which also leads me to all of the assessments they took each month, their individual scores, and that blue plus sign. There's that blue plus sign. That blue plus sign tells us we can get to more information. So if I was really concerned that he'd been Tier 1 all year and then hit Tier 2 here at the end of the year, blue plus sign, let me see those questions. Let me see what the narrator asked that student. Let me find out, did they take their time answering these questions, or was it a matter of true skill deficiency? So again, a way to hold everybody accountable, look at that data, dig into it, find out what the narrator was saying. Use these pieces to talk to your students as well. If you find that there's a student that's not performing to the expectation that you've expected, being able to drill into this information is going to be vital. Blue plus signs. Blue plus signs are going to be great assets to you in getting into this information. I'm going to go ahead and wrap this up for now, try to keep it short and sweet. But really there are three reports that we want to focus on as we're wrapping our head around iStation and getting into this data. Number one, your ISIP summary. That's the very first thing we want to look at. That's where did we land? Where did the students land in the assessment? Number two, my priority report. Classroom teachers, this report is vital to you for documentation of intervention, identifying for small group instruction. This is the what's next. We've seen where we are. What's next? Identifying intervention needs and performing intervention in my small groups. Number three, I need to share this information out with my parents and my students, maybe my principal. Student summary handouts. Those are going to be vital to you as well for sharing individualized information, showing growth over time in a visual fashion, looking at percentile rankings, looking at grade equivalencies, and tracking growth over time. So those are the three I want to emphasize to all of you. Your priority report is number two. Remember that, but it is the most important. ISIP summary, priority, that's vital for intervention. That's where we're going to see growth. And then number three is your student summary handout. So I hope you find this helpful for those of you in that classroom level role, and for those that are supporting the classroom teachers. We can definitely cover more in-depth information from a leadership role as necessary. So I look forward to hearing from you and hope that you find this information helpful as you move forward in your implementation of iStation. So again, my name is Lori Lynch. I'm the Director of Training for iStation, and we look forward to assisting you. And thank you for your partnership.